I was told that we had to make sure that Johnny never got back to the trailer, because if he got back to the trailer, we'd lose him. And so I made him a part of everything. I discovered he loved playing practical jokes, and I love practical jokes. And we would just play practical jokes on everybody. And he became a part of the crew. He would not leave the camera. It was one of his best experiences, he said.
Good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said, well, I'm doing great. Today we're gonna have a really fun, exciting vlog because Todd Fisher has a friend in town. I'm staying here at their house still, wearing out my welcome, and he said, you know, Jordan, I think you should talk to my friend Roy. He is, in my opinion, the best cinematographer there is in the business today. I started reading up on Roy, and he was the cinematographer, the man behind the camera of Nightmare on Elm Street 3, some of Quantum Leap, the Beauty and the Beast series, and many, many more things. So today, we're gonna talk to him about where his inspiration came from, how he goes about filming the movies and television that we know, and what his story is. So, Days with Jordan the Lion, Roy Wagner, and you all, it begins right now. So Roy, thank you for sitting down and talking to me today. I was quite impressed when I looked you up. Todd said, you know, this is the best guy in the business, in my opinion, as a cinematographer. He said, if I'm looking to hire somebody, I go for Roy. And then I look you up and I see Kodak named you one of the all-time 100 greatest cinematographers. What does a cinematographer do exactly for people that are watching a movie at home and know who an actor is, maybe even know who a director is? Where do you come in?
It varies a lot based upon the film, the director, the actors, the studio, what kind of movie it is, how much money they have. It varies substantially, but it's really kind of the in-between between the director, the in-between between the actors, and the in-between between all the other creative people. We have to find a way of interfacing with everybody and bringing all of that knowledge that they have and the knowledge that we have into that little frame that is the movie, which tells the story, and we create the illusions based upon the interpretations of our partners, the directors and the actors and the other filmmakers. And we all have our own personal signatures and point of views, but I've tried throughout my career to not have that. I've tried to discover new things about myself, new things about the way to express telling stories visually, because we create the illusions visually for storytelling.
Well, just so people can get an idea of what you've worked on, you've done, at least this is what I found online, 2 episodes of Ray Donovan. You did the entire series of The Beast, which I really want to talk to you about. I also see that you did 36 episodes of House. You did 9 episodes of CSI. I also see Nick of Time with Johnny Depp. I see 43 episodes of Party of 5. I see another Stakeout. I see that you won 2 Emmy Awards for Quantum Leap and the Ron Perlman Beauty and the Beast with Linda Hamilton. And then I also see you did Return to Horror High and A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. That is quite a list.
And Witchboard.
Wow.
And besides that, a lot of karate films. And I've tried to vary it a lot. The fellow that trained me to be a cinematographer had photographed Streetcar Named Desire and Picture of Dorian Gray and My Fair Lady and Easter Parade. He was Judy Garland's cinematographer. So I always felt that I was going to spend my whole life photographing musicals, because that's what he did. Funny Girl, Hello Dolly, Auntie Mame, Gypsy, and I didn't. I seem to be considered a fellow that hides in the dark. Dark images seem to be my...
You seem to really bring that to life.
Well, you know, the truth is in the shadows.
Really?
And it's not in the light. It's what's hidden behind in the shadows, that people permeate the shadows with what they don't want you to know. And so for me, that's the excitement, the fun of storytelling, is finding out what is not necessarily on the surface and exploring that. So I tend to play with the shadows quite a bit. Never dark for darkness sake, but just I love the idea that there is that range of possibilities, the black where nothing exists, shadows where everything exists, and highlights, the key light where everybody tries to tell you what they want you to think, but that's not necessarily the truth.
Can I ask, you did Nightmare on Elm Street 3. At that point, you're coming into the third of a very popular series. I mean, for me, my age group, it was one of the formative horror movies of my life. What kind of mindset do you go into? Do you still go into it like you're going to do it the way you do it, or do you try and fit into what Nightmare on Elm Street's already known for?
We didn't try to do anything like the first one, nor the second one. I mean, the director, Chuck Russell, he loved music videos. He loved humor, and we had not only Chuck, but we had Frank Darabont, and we had Bruce Wagner, all very dark people.
And Freddy himself to capture on screen.
Robert is one of the sweetest, nicest guys in the world. It doesn't make any sense that he plays that part. But when you think about it, it makes perfect sense, because he is the ultimate Pied Piper. And that's who Robert is. He's just a wonderful man. But I didn't try in any way to copy the first two. The second one wasn't very successful. The first was hugely successful, and we felt like the third was going to fail, because it was just, the second one had failed so bad.
Right.
But we didn't, and we found a new journey to take. It was finding the dark humor in Robert Englund and Freddy. I mean, the line "Welcome to Prime Time, Bitch" isn't in any of the scripts. It's something that Robert came up with on the set. And I remember him coming up to Chuck and I and saying, "I have an idea for this, What if after I push her into the television set, why don't I say, 'Welcome to Prime Time, Bitch'?" And I thought, wow, that's one of the greatest lines I've ever heard. But there were a few of those all the way through the film. I mean, the bastard child of 1,000 maniacs, or whatever it is, we shot that scene on Halloween.
Really?
And it was, I stood there and I thought we were at the old Veterans Hospital in Westwood, California. It was totally abandoned, incredibly haunted and spooky. And we were standing up in the very top in the rafters in the attic where that scene was done with her and I can't think of the character's name. And he's trying to explore who Freddy is, and of course she is the mother of Freddy, and which is never really admitted to in our film. But that line, that's such an iconoclastic line that you just suddenly realize you're doing something very unusual and special. And that's how Nightmare was. We worked incredibly long hours. We did things that most big studio films did with a great deal more money. And I not only photographed that, I operated it as well. And I don't normally do that, but I did it on that. And the Freddy Snake, I remember when we were shooting, getting ready to shoot that, I went over to take a look at the snake, and we had incredible puppeteers, and they built this beautiful snake, and I walked over and looked, and I went, "Oh my God." I said, "Chuck, you gotta come take a look at this." And he came and looked at it, and he said, "Oh my God." I said, "It looks like a giant penis." And he said, "Yeah, it does." And so for the next, it was, we had one of the best puppeteers in the world, and for the next 2 or 3 hours, they were painting Freddy, trying to make him darker so he didn't look like a penis. And then we discovered that he couldn't gobble Patricia up, because it was made out of rubber, and so it would just collapse as you were trying to bring. So I suggested we shoot it in reverse and then print it back normally, so that in fact we were pulling him off of Patricia, and the puppeteer was doing this all the time and pulling him off of Patricia. And then when you print it forward, it looks like he's gobbling her up. And there was all kinds of innocent, innocuous things that happened in that film. I mean, the scene where Freddy is exploding through the room and all the walls are falling apart and the carpet. The first time we did that, the way they constructed it was they built sort of a roller coaster rails behind the set walls and under the floor with balsa wood covering it. So as soon as you would run something over those rails, and in this case it was skateboard wheels with a football helmet, with a link of football helmets tied together, and the props and the grips would be pulling this rope to run it through the walls and do that. And there would be one snake that would do the walls and another snake that would do the floor. And of course we had to have squibs to blow up the lights and break plaster and that kind of thing. And the first time we shot it, myself and Russell Carpenter, who was the director of photography on Titanic, who won the Oscar for Titanic, he was my other operator. Wow. And we were shooting this and we heard all this cacophony of noise, and when we cut, I turned to Russell and I said, "Did you see anything?" He said, "No, I didn't see a thing." And the set looked perfect, just like it had when we started rolling. And we discovered that they'd literally torn apart the set without breaking any of the balsa wood. So we had to come back a week later to do it again, and that time, of course, that's the one you see in the film.
Wow.
And it was all kinds of, for example, when Patricia runs into the room of dead bodies, the hanging bodies, Chuck said at one point, he said, "You know, this isn't looking right to me. None of you look like you're dead." You know, they were hanging by it. None of this was CG. We didn't have any computer graphics. This was all done physical. Everything was mechanical and physical. So when we were doing that scene, we had people in harnesses hanging. And Chuck turned and looked around. We had about 30 people hanging in front of a blue screen. And Chuck said, "The only one that looks like they're dead is this guy right here." And the guy was literally suffocating because his harness is...
No kidding.
Yeah, and we caught him just in time. That's happened to me twice.
No kidding.
And not once in that show, but we caught it just in time where the guy would have died right there in front of us.
Not a method actor.
And there was all kinds of things like that happened all the way through. I mean, the walls coming in on the kids, that was the most rinky-dink set that we had. It was horrible, and they built it in such a manner that I couldn't get the camera far in the back to see the whole room. And so we literally had to break out a wall of the stage, and we had to have the grips, literally everybody surrounding the walls on the back sides, just shoving it together and collapsing it in on itself as we were doing the scene.
That's amazing. Because that's one of the things I was going to say is, you know, the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the thing that I loved about it the most is like the effects and the way that they make his horror come through the walls and stuff. Mm-hmm. You had to, by the third movie, match or at least do something better. Yeah, and you did.
It was tough. It was very tough on that because, you know, again, everything was physical, mechanical. It took lots of time to do, and there was very little money. The effects people, the hallway where the big wheelchair, they built the hallway before they built the wheelchair, and they couldn't get the wheelchair into the hallway.
Wow.
And so we literally had to take that apart and rebuild the hallway. And again, that was all done with wires, and there's a certain number of times if you see it too bright on television, you can see the wires.
Oh wow!
And where he's hanging like a puppet.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's all. It was fun though. You know, low budget movies were always fun if you're young and you don't fall asleep. But it was a great opportunity. I love horror films anyway.
Me too. Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about might not be something a lot of people know, but I read Patrick Swayze's book and made me a big fan of the guy, and then he talks a lot about how much he finally got a TV show that he was just absolutely excited to do, and it was a show that you filmed. It was The Beast, and that's when he found out that he was very sick and was trying to hold it together for the continuation of the season. you're the man that shot that. What was that filming like, and what are your recollections of the Beast?
Well, it was incredibly difficult because Patrick was dying right in front of us. I mean, he would go off the set, go to his dressing room, and curl up into a ball like a baby, and be throwing up and literally dying. And I remember one time, John Badham was the director of this episode. We were shooting a close-up of Patrick. The camera was going to be coming inside the bar that they always rent, coming into a close-up of Patrick. And Patrick, we hadn't started rolling yet, and Patrick looked really bad. And generally when he got on the set, he could pull it together. But this time he really looked bad. And I said, Patrick, are you okay? He said, I'll be okay. And then when John Badham called action, Patrick Swayze, it was like that the cancer didn't exist. I remember we were on location one night out in the city, and everybody stopped Patrick. They all loved him. All the citizens of Chicago where we shot it. I mean, they were screaming, Patrick, we love you, we love you. And at one point he turned and looked at everybody and said, I'm not dead yet. And it was so hilarious. It was wonderfully funny. He had a great sense of humor about himself. He was someone I really did not want to know before I started the show. I didn't think that we would get along at all. But we became incredibly good friends.
Why was that you didn't think?
He seemed like sort of a roughhouse kind of guy, and I'm not that kind of person.
You said your brother had worked with him.
My brother worked with him on North and South and told me what a wonderful guy he was. He was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and he played hard all his life. He was still smoking during The Beast. And my two favorite people in this business I've ever worked with are Patrick Swayze and Johnny Depp. And they're very much alike. They're like innocent children. They don't have, there's no malice with either one of them. There was never any malice with Johnny, or it was just like innocent, absurd child humor.
Yeah, you worked with him on Nick of Time, correct?
Right.
What was that like? What was that experience? Because that's a pretty good cast.
It was fun. I mean, we shot it in continuity, so everything was
That's kind of rare.
Very rare. And everything was linear. And I was told that we had to make sure that Johnny never got back to the trailer, because if he got back to the trailer, we'd lose him. And so I made him a part of everything. I discovered he loved playing practical jokes, and I love practical jokes. And we would just play practical jokes on everybody. And he became a part of the crew. He would not leave the camera. It was one of his best experiences, he said. And Patrick was just exactly like him, except that Patrick was dying.
Yeah.
And he was magical. The big stars I've worked with in my life have this magic about them that is something that permeates through the lens.
Who are some of those people that you can think of off the top of your head?
Audrey Hepburn, Barbra Streisand. I'd say Billy Peterson on CSI. There's something about him that just gets through that lens, and you don't see it on set. Johnny definitely. And I don't think Johnny was cast properly in Nick of Time. He was not the right person for that role, but he was amazing as an actor, as was Patrick. There's just something that's, you work with some actors and you know that what you're getting is what you're getting. But then when you watch some of them and you think that you've seen everything they're doing, and then you watch the dailies, you go, oh my God, there was so much more to this. Jimmy Stewart was that way.
Really? What did you work with him on?
I worked as an assistant with Jimmy Stewart on a couple of films. And he was just remarkable. And then when I was in the Air Force, I worked with Jimmy Stewart because he was an officer. And we would shoot things with Jimmy all the time.
Now, is it true that you knew Ansel Adams?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Can you talk about that?
I met Ansel Adams. I really didn't want to meet him because he was a still photographer, and still photography was for amateurs. It was not for me. And my commander in the Air Force was good friends with Ansel. And he said, look, we're moving from Lookout Mountain, which we were stationed out in Hollywood, to Norton Air Force Base, if I don't send you off on OJT, which is on the job training, if I don't send you off, you're going to be building shelves, you're going to be doing government jobs here, and it's going to be miserable. He saw that I really loved what I did, and that I had talent. And so he said, I'm going to send you up to a friend of mine up in Big Sur, photographer, and I want you to spend a week with him and help him out. I went up there, and I didn't know, in the 60s, nobody really knew who Ansel Adams was unless you were a real photographer. And I was, you know, a motion picture photographer. I was just really getting started. And Ansel principally taught me this exposure and how to preconceive or preconceptualize what you see in front of you, and how to find the frame to tell the story. And so I worked with him for a week, and I came back to military base, and my commander sent me up 5 or 6 more times. And at that time, Ansel was not doing a lot of photography, he was doing a lot of printing. It was great for me because, you know, in the printing I learned technique. Photography would have been just waiting long periods of time till the
perfect light.
Yeah. But with this, I got to listen to him talk, and he really taught me a lot. Over anyone that I've ever been around, he taught me more than anybody.
I can see, you know, like you said, a lot of people know you for your darkness. I went back and looked at because I remember when it first aired, The Beauty and the Beast. You know, a lot of people know Ron Perlman from Sons of Anarchy, but long before that, he was Beauty and the Beast.
This was CBS.
Okay.
And they had never done a dark show. In fact, I was told when I started the show, I shot the pilot. When I started the show, they said, don't make it dark. We won't be able to broadcast it. And my director, Richard Franklin, said, nonsense, we're going to make it dark. It's going to be brooding, it's going to be...
The concept is dark.
Well, the interesting thing about Richard was, when I read the script, I said, this is great, you're going to have all these tunnels and this underground, I'd make them cold and cruel and visceral. And he said, no, I don't want that. I want the underground to be like a mother's womb. I want it to be warm and secure and safe. And I thought, well, that makes no sense at all. But then when I thought about it, of course it's where she has to escape to get away from the cruel world above ground. And so Miami came from that. It came from that concept of the warmth, the underground, which is dark and scary seemingly, but it's the place where you can be hidden and protected. Whereas above ground is cold and blue in New York and very dangerous place. And so it was just the opposite of what I'd read in the script, and the director literally helped me find the look for that show. So I did it was my first time doing television, the first time for Ron to do television. And I did the pilot, and then I did the first 3 episodes and got fired. And I got fired because they needed someone to blame for how long it took to put the makeup on Ron. Oh. And that was me. So I got fired. They brought in 2 or 3 other cinematographers. They never, ever could work as fast as I could. They kept asking me to come back, but fortunately for me, I was already doing Quantum Leap.
Which was awesome, because what I love about Quantum Leap is it seems like every episode you're going into a different time period, which gives you so many different avenues to be creative.
Well, the pilot was, I think, 4 or 5 different sub-stories.
And a great actor also, I feel like.
Yes, he's a wonderful guy too. Scott Bakula was the best. Well, both of them were incredible. And we had a great production designer who built beautiful sets. We very seldom got off the Universal backlot. We were always shooting there, and as you say, every episode was different. I mean, on the pilot of Quantum Leap, I think we did The Natural and The Dirty Dozen, and there were 2 or 3 other things that we did that we were emulating successful features. And that was Don Belisario. I remember when we were doing the pilot, before we ever started, Universal did not want to authorize us. They didn't want to authorize the budget. And Belisario, creator of the show, with his wife, Deborah Pratt, said, nonsense, we'll give them the budget they want, and we will never have to match it. we're just going to do what we have to do. If we're successful, then they won't care. If we're unsuccessful, we'll never work again.
Yeah.
And so
heck of a gamble.
we ended up doing that, and it was so far over budget. I mean, we built an X-2, which was a spy plane. We built it out of styrofoam, and that had to be taken to Edwards Air Force Base so we could shoot the scenes there, where you know, he was a test pilot, and that took round-the-clock construction. Everything was around the clock. So overtime, union shows, overtime, it was just crazy.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How long have you been from the time that you started getting a paycheck in this business till now? How long have you been working?
55 years.
There are not many people that can play, I almost say play the game, but you have to, a lot of people don't know, you have to get along with a lot of people in order to keep getting rehired, and you have to see a lot of people's visions along with your own. That's quite a testament to you.
Thank you. You have to find your place. I mean, anybody can be a personal artist, express their own personal point of view, but that's not necessarily what they're looking for. They're wanting to find somebody that can create this amalgam that can become the voice of the show. And so you have to find your place. Sometimes you have a stronger voice than you do at other times. And yet, even during those times, you can't take authorship. The author is the director.
Yeah.
And that's critically important. It always has to be the director and the writer, but principally in film, it's the director. And the stars have a major voice in that as well. And so a lot of times when I'm teaching young filmmakers, I will tell you, you're never going to get your way. You're going to maybe get portions of what you think are your way, but you're never going to completely get your way because you're working in an industry that's a combustion of a lot of personalities and a lot of talent and non-talent, and finding the voice of that show.
Thank you so much for letting me talk to you and giving us your time and your expertise today, Roy. This was so fun.
You're welcome.